Welcome to By the Cottage Hearth with Dana Maree. I'll be taking you through the journey we make as healers, the impact we're yet to make, and the words to use to describe it. Come on in. Hello, and welcome back to the Hearth. Today we're speaking with Kristel Gittins from Open Heart Empire. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I'm really excited just to do this today.
Lovely to have you on. So I'm going to go right out the gate and start with your journey because I love it when other people explain their own stories. It's kind of my thing, and I like the example that it can give other people in terms of how others speak about their own work. So I'm going to start with what led you to the role of it being a healer?
I really think that it was more accepting rather than being led to it, because
Ooh, I love that.
I really I'd always been a healer. I'd always been someone who coached my friends and was forward thinking and nurtured people and taught. And so I was doing I was basically doing a lot of work with people before I went, this is what I'm going to do. And one of the things about that was that because I'd always done that, and the only real break that I'd really had from that was when my partner passed, where my focus shifted to actually going into seriously wanting to heal myself. That really sort of shifted in my formal training towards being a healer began. But I have a cousin who had said to me, she was doing a business course or something, and in the business course there was like a presentation that had to be done, and one of her colleagues in the course was standing up and doing the presentation and was actually a life coach, and was saying, this is what I do in my business, and started listing off all of these things. And she was sitting there listening to this lady talk about all of the stuff that she did in her business, and she was like, oh my God, Cousin Kristel does that. Cousin Kristel does that for me. Oh, and she does that. Oh, and she does that too. And so then she ran out very excitedly on the break and called me and was like, you'll never guess what? You need to become a life coach. Like, you do all of this shit for me. It's amazing. And I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's a pretty big phone call to get.
Yeah.
You need to do this.
Yeah. The irony in that is that about possibly 7 or 8 years prior, maybe 10 years prior, a girlfriend of mine had actually moved over to Queensland. So she used to live up here with me, not with, but, and I took her through a lot of processes, a lot of self-healing, a lot of coming into her own, healing stuff that she was going through and learning things. And she moved over to Queensland and started seeing some coaches and healers over there. And she called me and was like, dude, you have to become a life coach because you do all of the shit that these people are doing for me. And we pay them, And I'm just
can make money from this. Yeah, it's a real thing.
Yeah. And so I'd always done it. And I remember doing that when I was in my early teens, 12 and 13 years old. I'd counsel my friends. I'd sit down and write plans with them. We'd set goals. I'd work them through whatever emotional stuff that they were going through. And, and they would call on me because I was that person. And then, other friends that would come to me and go, I don't know how to do this. Can you help me? So whether it was running a household, whether it was learning how to, dress themselves to,
needed guidance,
find their own style, whether just anything like nutrition stuff and goal setting stuff. A girlfriend who used to be my babysitter. So I met her when she was 16, and she came to me when she was 19 and said, I don't want to be a jillaroo anymore. I want to be a police officer, and I don't know who to tell or what to do. And so I went, okay, well, let's look at when the intakes are. Let's look at what fitness level you need to be at. And we made this whole plan,
Love
and
that.
she went off and she did it. And yeah, so I really always was.
There.
Yeah, just doing what I do, and that, I always had my own interests in, specifically, my passion is in relationships,
Yeah.
and that's, relationships, like intimate relationship with yourself, relationship with your children, relationships with your partner and family, and how they operate and those dynamics. So that's really where my heart was, because my passion is love, and getting the most out of our experience as we can. And I was always fascinated by the way that people loved each other, and you could see, like, even when I was a little girl, I could see the different ways that people loved each other in the way that they could, and what those, how they presented that, even if the other person wasn't necessarily able to see that or receive it. And obviously, as a little girl, I didn't understand the depth of, all of those
What was going on?
dynamics.
Yeah.
But I could always see and understand a loving action, or a loving behavior, or the intention of, and that connection or electricity or energy between people when they were really loving with each other. So yeah, I could always sort of tangibly, physically almost see and feel that.
Yeah.
So that always fascinated me.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's
Yeah.
kind of how
Where
that.
you've come from. I love the way you speak about your work, because you can really feel that passion coming through. And I know, obviously, because of the work that I do, I know how hard it can be to speak about the different parts of your work. But the way that you always come back to anchoring yourself into your values and what's important to you, I think that's really important for people to know, that if it is something you're struggling with when it comes to talking about your work, come back to feeling, because feeling is so emotion based. It's so intangible in itself. But when you connect to those feelings, the words just come out. Like, look at when you're ranting and rambling, when you're passionate or excited about something, like, you don't think about it, it just comes out. So I think it's a really cool thing for you to touch on, that that's something that you're so passionate about, because it shows, and beautifully, mind you. What do you think is the most difficult thing when it comes to speaking about your work?
I think when people say, what do you do? And it's such an undefined thing, because the idea of do can be so limiting. And it's kind of hard for people to go to understand. If I were to go, I listen to people and see what their needs are, and then I facilitate whatever it is that's going to shift them forward. Because then they're kind of like,
but what does that mean?
Yeah, like, and so, like, then going into, like, oh, well, I do energy healing. Oh, well, what's that? Oh, well, that's, where you work in this level, and you through this and through this and through this, and you help by this. And they're like, but what's that mean?
Yeah.
And
you go into that education mode,
Yeah.
almost having to tell them what it is.
Yeah. And then, unless they, even if, like, and even like, because there are so many different areas that you work in, like, coming to someone and going, okay, well, or someone coming to you and me going, what's going on for you? It really is, I guess, quite a bespoke process where you
Personal.
actually listening to what is going on so that you can then figure out what is needed, but also approach it in a way that is unique to the way that person's going to receive it. So if there was someone who had a preference for an energy healing, but wasn't feeling or experiencing a great amount of shift in their life, and it was more that, we kind of like a top up space, like they weren't actually doing the
The
work, they
deep
were just,
work.
yeah,
Yeah.
then I would encourage them to go into the place that made them uncomfortable and go, okay, well, before we get on the table, we're going to talk.
I
And,
love that. Yeah.
you know, and, and knowing when it's going to be the right thing for the right person,
Yeah.
being able to be attuned to that person and what's happening for them and how they actually are receiving. Are they a really visual person? Are they a really active person? Do we need to actually get up and do movement to bring in a shift or an awareness or and what's going to be most powerful that for them, and that it really is hard to sort of just go to someone who says to
What
you,
do
what do
you
you
do?
do?
Yeah.
Because it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
There are similar elements, but it's different. And
Yeah.
I might be working with somebody who's quite analytical and just needs a straightforward plan, and somebody who actually supports and encourages them. Here's the plan. I've helped you to lay it out for yourself. And I'm happy to be your accountability person to go, hey, how are you going with that thing? And sometimes that's all somebody needs.
Yeah.
And sometimes all somebody else might need is someone to hold space while they let down and out everything that's going on for them.
Unpack. Yeah.
Yeah. And then allow them the space to sit with that and feel those emotions and then guide them with, questions that help them to bring them to their own moments of recognition or awareness where they can make shifts themselves. So it's different. And it's hard to say, oh, I do this thing.
This thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that your own personal experiences have helped you with knowing, recognizing what they're needing? Or do you think it's more an innate thing you were born with, this capacity to recognize what's going on for them?
I think it's both. I think going through my trainings in the different modalities really helped me to hone and define things that I knew and understood innately, like to sort of give them a bit of structure so that I understood what it was that I was, had the awarenesses of. Yeah, but also when we going through and we're doing our own work, and then we can recognize a pattern or a behavior or something in another person to be able to go, oh, okay, this is familiar. I can see something happening here that I understand, and and perhaps it's this, and then sort of feeling that out, questioning it, pulling it apart, and then sometimes you're bang on, and people go, wow, how do you know? How did you know that? Or but then other times you might go, okay, that's a little bit different to what I initially thought it was, but now it's led me over here and I've
Now
got
we
a
can
better
follow.
understanding and we can, yeah. So yeah, I think it's a bit of both.
I love that.
Absolutely.
I love
Yeah.
that. And one more question that I ask everyone, because I love the answers that come up. What is your impact or legacy goal? What do you want to leave behind? It's a hard
If
one, isn't
I it I it is,
it?
and I mean, it is it's kind of big, but it's kind of small, and I guess that when I was really connecting in and working with finding my business name, ultimately, I want my legacy to be an open-hearted empire of love.
Oh, I love that.
And that sounds phenomenally expansive and fanciful and like way like, like just like a massive projection of, what's that? Like a grandiose vision, sort of. But on a lower level, when we sort of, if we pull it back down into the reality, and the present, and sort of the human level, I think that the better that we know ourselves, the more of our own healing we're able to do, the more we are able to connect open-heartedly with each other and with ourselves, and that the better our relationships overall will be. Like, the quality of our life is really built in our relationships, and the joy and happiness that we experience in our life is built in our relationships. We are, human people. Like, we're not actually meant to be in solitude. We're not meant to live our entire lives in isolation. We are meant to commune. We are meant to connect. We are meant to be with each other and amongst each other and connected to each other. So the more that we're able to open our heart through healing, the better those connections are going to be. And then, instead of being closed and hurt little children trapped in giant adult bodies, just butting up against each other, the more we get out of life. And that's really what I want. I want my children to have joyful and loving relationships, and I want my friends to have joyful and loving relationships, and my family to have joyful and loving relationships, and I want that to shine from them so that they are able to fully express, both consciously and unconsciously, who they are inherently, because, and I suppose through experience, the one thing that I really understand is that when a person dies and what's left of them is, in a physical sense, photos or film or whatever, photos will never, ever, ever fully do justice to convey who a person was. They're so two-dimensional or one-dimensional in that sense. And it's very hard to define someone with just a photo when the energy of that person is so much more. Yeah. It's so much more expansive, and it's really hard to sort of go, this person was an absolute light in life because of the way that they move through it, because of their humor, because of their, the way that they spoke, or their mannerisms, the way that they moved, the things that they did, how they interacted with other people. It just is such an intangible thing that is so huge, but is so hard to define, especially after they're gone. So that's what I really want is just for us to be able to live unencumbered by fears and doubts and shame, and to have really beautiful and loving relationships.
I love it so much. And I love how you tie that up, how it was such a quick and simple, oh, it's just a small thing. But you know what? I love that it is this big goal. I love it as this huge impact that you want to leave behind, because I think giving ourselves permission to be able to reach that high, to dream that big, to believe ourselves to be capable of creating an impact like that, I think it is beautiful. And I love that is the declaration that you've made for yourself. So thank you so much for that answer. It was absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
Otherwise, thank you. Thank you so much for being on with me today. It's been wonderful to hear your insight and your perspective from your own experiences and the work that you're doing. What I'll do is I'll pop your Facebook links for Open Heart Empire in the captions and everything, so people can go and check out the work that you're doing and the stuff that you're talking about. So thank you for being on with me today.
Thank you for having me on today. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of By the Cottage Hearth with me, your host, Dana Maree. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow on whatever platform you're on to be notified of new episodes. And you can also follow me on By the Cottage Hearth on Facebook and Instagram. Check out show notes for any links or freebie goodies that I might have going at the time. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next episode. Keep healing.